concrete and asphalt. We provide ADA solutions for clients who will typically be caught up in ADA lawsuits. What I wanted to do is walk with you today on a project that we just recently completed and show you what the law truly requires. The law truly requires an accessible route. An accessible route includes a point of entrance at the beginning, which is where I'm standing now. So right now you can see the dual sign that shows an accessible route from the city sidewalk, which is required. Most often in a lawsuit, there's only a couple allegations and the attorney only focuses on those, which leaves the owner of the property open for additional lawsuits on the remaining items that are not included in the accessible route. So what we're going to do is start here on what we did on this particular project, because we had to deviate away from current codes. One of the codes in question is that the ADA parking stalls must be placed at closest to the entrance. This particular property, based on its existing contours and slopes, it was impossible to do that. So what we had to do is deviate from that. Because we deviated, we wanted to get local jurisdictions' approval, so we put together a full set of plans on this project that shows the accessible route, had them approved by local jurisdiction. So if you walk with me, we're going to show what an accessible route truly is. So here we are at the city sidewalk. It shows a path of travel. Not all disabled people drive vehicles, so you have to provide an accessible route from the city sidewalk. So here's the signage that shows the accessible route from the city sidewalk. And as we walk, you'll see all the units. We've replaced this sidewalk because it had a cross slope of 3%. Now we brought it up to 1.5 so that it still drains, and it is now compliant. And as you walk through, we can see the contour of the sidewalk. It's nice, it's consistent, and it's at a 1.5, which is less than the 2% maximum. And as we walk through, you see the entrances, the doors. We've changed the thresholds so that the thresholds are ADA compliant. And as you continue to come through, you'll see we're coming upon a parallel curb ramp. Now this parallel curb ramp accesses the ADA parking stall, which, as you can see, is across the parking lot. And because it's across the parking lot is why we had to get the local jurisdiction. And as you come back around, you'll see the path of travel. Because we're crossing a vehicular drive aisle, we had to place the detectable warning domes. As you come back over here, you see the detectable warning domes. As you see the detectable warning domes, they alert a visually impaired person that they're going into a dangerous vehicular path. So now as we come through the path of travel, now keep in mind, this path of travel also has 2% maximum cross slope with a 5% in the direction of travel. So this is all put back in compliance as well. Now we come to our parallel curb ramp. So we have a path of travel from the city sidewalk, we have a path of travel from the ADA parking, and we have a compliant parallel curb ramp. If you take notice of these detectable warning domes, you can see on a parallel curb ramp that these domes actually come to the edge of the asphalt. 90% of the contractors make this mistake and they recess them back 6 inches. That's non-compliant, and most inspectors will never pick up on that. However, these are put in perfectly according to federal and California code. Now, as this parallel curb ramp comes up, we have our landing, level landing, 2% maximum. We have less than 8.33% as we rise on our slope. We come back in to our compliant sidewalks, still less than 2%. Now we come into a ramp. This ramp is at 7.9%, where we have a maximum of 8.33, which requires handrails. These are the ADA handrails. They have the correct extensions, they have the correct height. Now, as you get into the handrails, you can either provide a curb. We use a 6-inch curb. The code calls for 2-inch minimum. However, we find that a 6-inch curb actually supports the railing in a fashion. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that the cars parking on the other side didn't come in and damage the railing. Or you can place a wheel guide, which is a metal piece that comes along the bottom. So you can either have a 2-inch wheel guide or you can have a 6-inch curb. And as you follow me down this ramp, you'll see again we have our detectable warnings. And at the bottom of a ramp, you do not need a 5-foot, we need a 6-foot landing, which is exactly what we have here. And here's another misconception about ADA compliance. When you have multiple buildings on a parcel, you need to link the buildings together with a path of travel that is compliant. They cannot necessarily go out onto the city sidewalk and use that as a path of travel. So as you look, we have a bank on the other side. We have an accessible path of travel that cannot exceed more than 5%. So now we have linked the buildings properly. We have our level landing. We're traveling down less than 5%. And we come into this custom curb ramp for the bank. Now this curb ramp, as you can see, has a 0 curb face. Detectable warning domes are required at 0 curb faces. So this was a very difficult ramp to put together based on existing conditions, but it came out very nicely. So we have our path of travel. We now enter into a level landing with our detectable warning domes as we come across. Again, we have our second ADA parking stall. And as you can see, we've placed a detectable warning domes because, again, you have to cross a vehicular path. So according to 11B, you need to have detectable warning domes. So as we come across, this is your standard van accessible parking stall. So a disabled person would park here, use the access aisle, path of travel less than 2% cross slope, and as you're coming back up, level landing. And as you have the level landing, now you're coming back up at less than 8%. Now, this particular 8.33 slope does not need a railing because this is a curb ramp. It's attached to a curb. The ramp that we just recently came down did not involve a curb ramp. So this does not require a railing. As we come up, we have a level landing before we enter into the bank. In addition to that, we have a Versatel machine. So the Versatel machine must also accommodate a disabled person by either a side approach or a forward approach. This one will accommodate a disabled person in a wheelchair with a side approach. So we have the ideal situation with the side approach for the Versatel machine. So as you pan around the whole site, we've created exactly what the law requires, which is a complete accessible route. You have an accessible route from all ADA parking stalls to all the buildings. You have an accessible route that's created from the city, and you have the buildings that are linked together eternally. Now you've complied with everything that the law requires on the exterior. The problem with this property previously is it was involved in multiple lawsuits. It had 3 lawsuits. The reason was each time there was a lawsuit, The owner only paid attention to the allegations in the lawsuit, so only fixed a couple of the items. He never concentrated on the complete accessible route. So that's what we have been trying to emphasize here at ACR, is when you have the allegations in your lawsuit, don't focus on just those. Ask for a CAST report, then make the corrections in your design according to the CAST report, and complete and design an accessible route. At that particular point, you are now compliant and you should not have any further lawsuits. Thank you again for joining me today. This has been an informative video on how to complete an accessible route. If you need formal plans, CAST reports, we have a legal advisor on our team. We provide a full circle of ADA compliance, so feel free to contact us. Stay tuned for our next video.